On September 3, 2025, the Caribbean sun beat down with its usual intensity, turning the surface of the sea into a shimmering expanse of blue and gold. A vessel named the Estrella del Mar sliced through the waves, churning white foam in its wake. It was a 7,200-ton cargo ship, 110 meters long, painted a nondescript gray and rust. To any casual observer, it was just another freighter moving goods through one of the world's busiest shipping lanes. It had departed from a port in Venezuela, its official manifest listing mundane cargo like machine parts and agricultural supplies. But its true purpose was far more sinister, a dark secret hidden within its steel hull. The ship was a floating fortress for a powerful criminal empire. Its crew was not made up of ordinary sailors earning an honest living. Instead, heavily armed guards patrolled the decks, their faces hard and watchful, their eyes constantly scanning the horizon. They were not guarding simple merchandise. They were protecting a cargo of immense value and immense evil. Deep within the ship's hold, far from any prying eyes, lay the ingredients for a tidal wave of death and destruction. This vessel was more than just a ship. It was a weapon, aimed directly at the heart of nations far away, a critical piece in a global game of power, profit, and terror. Hidden beneath false floors and inside specially constructed compartments were 300 tons of methamphetamine precursors. This was not the finished drug, but the raw chemical building blocks needed to produce it. From this single shipment, chemists could cook an astonishing 190 tons of pure crystal meth. On the streets of cities like Miami, Houston, and New York, this poison would sell for an estimated $569 million. But the ship carried more than just the potential for addiction and misery. It also held 13,000 crates and barrels, each one stuffed with American dollars, cash intended to fund a network of violence and terrorism that spanned continents. Worst of all, the Estrella del Mar was a prison. In the dark, sweltering lower decks, 42 civilians were held captive. These men and women had been kidnapped, trafficked, and forced into slavery. They toiled under the constant threat of the guards' guns, performing grueling labor with no hope of escape. They were the human cost of the cartel's business, their suffering a grim footnote in the ledger of illicit profits. The ship moved silently through the waves, a self-contained world of criminality, carrying a triple cargo of drugs, dirty money, and human despair, its shadow stretching far across the calm Caribbean waters. The brutal operation aboard the Estrella del Mar was the work of a group known as Tren de Aragua. This was not a typical drug cartel or a simple street gang. It was a sprawling transnational criminal organization that had grown from the chaos of a collapsing Venezuela. In February 2025, the United States government had taken the significant step of designating Tren de Aragua a foreign terrorist organization. This classification put them in the same category as infamous groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. It was a recognition that their activities went far beyond a desire for profit. They sought to destabilize governments and spread terror as a tool of control and influence. The cartel's history is written in blood. Intelligence agencies have linked Tren de Aragua to over 2,000 murders and more than 3,500 documented cases of human trafficking. Their cruelty is legendary. They are known for extortion, kidnapping, and assassination, operating with a level of brutality that shocks even seasoned law enforcement officials. Their drug trafficking network is sophisticated and vast, a poison pipeline that stretches from the coca fields and chemical labs of South America directly into the veins of American cities. They have established footholds in Miami, Houston, and New York, bringing their unique brand of violence and exploitation to the streets of the United States. The Trump administration has publicly claimed that Tren de Aragua operates with the protection of Nicolas Maduro's regime in Venezuela, though this assertion remains a point of contention among intelligence experts. What is undeniable is the gang's power. They control territory, run prisons, and command an army of loyal foot soldiers who enforce their will without question. They are a hybrid threat, blending the profit-driven motives of a cartel with the ideological fervor and destabilizing tactics of a terrorist group. They see themselves not just as criminals, but as a power in their own right, a state within a state. This unique and dangerous nature is what made the cargo of the Estrella del Mar so alarming to U.S. officials. The methamphetamine precursors were not just for making drugs to sell to addicts. The profits were part of a larger strategy. The vast sums of cash on board were earmarked to fund their expansion, to buy more weapons, to bribe more officials, and to finance acts of terror. The enslaved civilians were a stark reminder of their complete disregard for human life. For Tren de Aragua, people are just another commodity to be bought, sold, or discarded. They represent a new and terrifying evolution in organized crime. The Estrella del Mar may have felt secure in the vastness of the open ocean, but it was not alone. For days it had been under constant, invisible surveillance by the United States. The initial tip-off came not from a satellite or a spy, but from human intelligence sources deep within the murky world of international crime. An informant, perhaps a rival or a disgruntled insider, had passed along crucial details about a major shipment leaving Venezuela. The information was fragmented at first. Whispers of a large vessel, a massive quantity of chemicals, and a connection to Tren de Aragua. This was the spark that ignited a massive intelligence-gathering operation. Once the initial alert was raised, the full might of American surveillance technology was focused on the southern Caribbean. High-altitude reconnaissance drones, flying so high they were invisible from the ground, began to monitor shipping traffic leaving Venezuelan ports. Satellites with powerful imaging capabilities were repositioned to sweep the area, their cameras capable of reading a license plate from space. Communications intelligence experts from the National Security Agency began sifting through billions of electronic signals, radio chatter, satellite phone calls, and encrypted messages, searching for any mention of the ship or its illicit cargo. Slowly, a clearer picture began to emerge. Analysts cross-referenced the informant's tip with shipping manifests and satellite observations. They identified the Estrella del Mar as a vessel of high interest. Its route was unusual, its ownership was obscured through a series of shell companies, and its communications patterns were suspicious. Further intelligence, possibly from a source on the ground, confirmed the presence of an unusually large number of armed guards on board. The final horrifying piece of the puzzle came when U.S. intelligence intercepted a faint, desperate signal that suggested the presence of captives on the ship, turning the mission from a drug interdiction to a potential hostage rescue. The ship was now marked, its every move was tracked in real time. A team of analysts at U.S. Southern Command headquarters in Florida built a complete profile of the vessel. They knew its speed, its heading, and the layout of its decks. They had thermal imaging that showed heat signatures from the engines and the living quarters, helping them estimate the number of people on board. They even had intelligence on the types of weapons the cartel guards were carrying. The Estrella del Mar sailed on, its crew oblivious. They believed they were hidden by the sea, but in reality they were trapped in a digital cage, watched by unseen eyes that were planning their every move. With the Estrella del Mar firmly in their sights, the Pentagon and U.S. Southern Command began to draw up a plan for an assault. The operation was given a code name, Steel Tide. The mission had multiple, complex objectives that had to be achieved almost simultaneously. First, they had to neutralize the cartel's armed force on the ship. Second, they had to secure the massive shipment of drug precursors and cash. Third, and most critically, they had to rescue the 42 civilian hostages without a single casualty. This last requirement made the operation exceptionally difficult. A simple missile strike was out of the question. This had to be a surgical operation of incredible precision and daring. The planners decided on a two-phase assault that would combine cutting-edge technology with elite special forces. The first phase would be a massive, coordinated drone strike. The U.S. had a covert base on the island of Curaçao, strategically located in the southern Caribbean. From this base, they would launch 50 kamikaze unmanned aerial vehicles, also known as loitering munitions. Each drone was small, fast, and packed with a 40-pound warhead. They were designed to fly low over the water, staying below the ship's radar horizon until the very last moment. Their targets would be selected with surgical care to maximize chaos among the cartel guards while minimizing risk to the hostages. The second phase of the attack would be a classic naval boarding, but executed with overwhelming force. A force of 200 U.S. Navy SEALs would be deployed for the mission. To get them close to the target ship without raising suspicion, they would be transported on a disguised fishing trawler, a common sight in these waters. The SEALs would approach the Estrella del Mar from the sea, using state-of-the-art Mk-29 rebreather diving systems. These devices produce no bubbles, allowing for a completely silent and invisible underwater approach. Once alongside the cargo ship's hull, they would use powerful magnetic grappling hooks to scale the sides and storm the decks. The total force assembled for Operation Steel Tide was formidable, 250 American operators in total. The 200 Navy SEALs would be the tip of the spear, responsible for the direct assault and hostage rescue. The other 50 personnel were the drone operators, intelligence analysts, and command and control staff who would orchestrate the attack from afar. Every detail was meticulously planned, from the timing of the drone strikes to the specific entry points for the SEAL teams. They studied blueprints of similar cargo ships and rehearsed the assault on full-scale mock-ups. The goal was to hit the cartel so hard and so fast that their command structure would collapse before they even knew what was happening. At 11:22 a.m. on September 3rd, the calm of the Caribbean morning was shattered. The 50 kamikaze UAVs, having flown their entire route just meters above the waves, suddenly rose up like a swarm of angry hornets and descended upon the Estrella del Mar. For the cartel guards on deck, there was no warning. One moment, they were idly scanning the empty sea. The next, the air was filled with the high-pitched whine of incoming drones. The attack was a masterpiece of digital choreography. Each drone had a specific pre-assigned target, all calculated to cripple the ship's ability to fight back, while carefully avoiding the areas where intelligence had placed the hostages. The explosions were not random. They were a series of sharp, precise strikes. The ship's main communications antenna, a $3 million piece of equipment connecting them to their command network, was vaporized in the first second. Other drones slammed into known weapons caches on the deck, setting off secondary explosions of ammunition. Heavy machine gun emplacements were targeted and destroyed. The strikes were designed to create maximum confusion and terror. Within the space of a few minutes, a staggering 37 separate explosions rocked the vessel from bow to stern. The ship, once a symbol of the cartel's power, was instantly transformed into a floating wreck of twisted metal and fire. The human toll on the cartel was immediate and devastating. The initial drone barrage instantly killed 9 cartel gunmen who were caught out in the open. Another 40 were wounded by shrapnel and the force of the blasts. Their screams now mixed with the blare of alarms and the crackle of flames. The surviving guards were in a state of complete shock. They had no idea where the attack was coming from or what was happening. Their command structure was gone. Their heavy weapons were destroyed, and their ship was a burning, smoking ruin. They scrambled for cover, firing their rifles blindly into the sky, their discipline completely broken by the sudden, overwhelming violence. While chaos reigned on the upper decks, the 42 enslaved civilians huddled in terror below. They heard the thunder of the explosions and felt the ship shudder violently beneath them. They did not know if this was a rescue or if they were all about to die. For them, the attack was a terrifying mystery, a storm of violence that had erupted from a clear blue sky. But the American planners had not forgotten them. The drone strikes had been carefully programmed to avoid their location, a testament to the precision of the intelligence and the technology used. The first phase of Operation Steel Tide was complete. The Serpent had been wounded, and it was now blind and terrified. Just 6 minutes after the first drone struck, at 11:28 a.m., the second phase of Operation Steel Tide began. As smoke billowed from the crippled Estrella del Mar, dark shapes emerged silently from the waves alongside its hull. These were the 200 Navy SEALs, their approach completely masked by the chaos of the drone attack and the silent efficiency of their rebreather diving gear. They fired magnetic grappling hooks onto the ship's railings, the lines zipping through the air with a faint hiss. In seconds, the elite warriors were scaling the steel sides of the ship, moving with a speed and confidence born of countless hours of training. They were a tide of black-clad commandos, rising from the sea to reclaim the vessel. The SEALs swarmed over the railings and onto the decks. They were armed with suppressed MP-7 submachine guns, weapons chosen for their effectiveness in close-quarters combat and their relatively quiet operation. The operators moved in small, highly coordinated teams, clearing the ship section by section. They encountered pockets of dazed and disorganized cartel guards who were no match for the professional soldiers. The firefights were short and brutal. The SEALs used flashbang grenades to disorient their enemies before moving in to neutralize them. Their movements were fluid and economical, a deadly dance of precision and force. The remaining 150 cartel guards, who had survived the drone strike, were systematically hunted down. The primary objective, however, was always the hostages. While some SEAL teams engaged the cartel fighters, others pushed deep into the ship's interior, heading directly for the location identified by intelligence. They breached heavy steel doors using small explosive charges, the sharp bang of the breach a signal of hope for those trapped inside. When they finally reached the squalid compartment where the 42 civilians were being held, they found them terrified but physically unharmed by the assault. The SEALs quickly identified themselves, their calm professionalism a stark contrast to the brutal chaos the captives had endured for weeks. The rescue was swift and efficient. The SEALs guided the freed hostages, some of whom were weak from malnutrition and exhaustion, up to the main deck. They provided them with water and immediate medical attention. All around them, the battle was ending. The remaining cartel members were either dead, wounded, or surrendering. The entire operation, from the first drone strike to the securing of the last hostage, had taken less than 30 minutes. The Estrella del Mar, once a floating den of terror, was now under American control. The silent warriors had completed their mission, saving 42 innocent lives from the clutches of one of the world's most dangerous criminal organizations. The successful raid on the Estrella del Mar was a major tactical victory for the United States, but it also marked a dramatic escalation in the war on drugs, sending shockwaves across the globe. News of the strike was met with a mixture of praise and condemnation. Domestically, the Trump administration hailed it as a decisive blow against narco-terrorists. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth publicly called groups like Tren de Aragua the Al-Qaeda of our hemisphere, framing the fight against them not as a law enforcement issue, but as a full-blown armed conflict. This rhetoric was backed by a significant policy shift, redefining the nature of America's engagement with these powerful criminal syndicates. This aggressive new stance did not go unchallenged. On the international stage, the reaction was harsh. Colombian President Gustavo Petro condemned the strikes as murder, arguing that military force was not the solution. On October 21, 2025, the UN Human Rights Council issued a declaration stating that the U.S. actions lacked a clear legal basis under international law. Venezuela, whose sovereignty was implicitly challenged by the operation in nearby international waters, accused the United States of piracy and murder. The unilateral military action created deep diplomatic rifts, particularly with Latin American nations who feared it set a dangerous precedent for U.S. intervention in the region. Back in Washington, D.C., the operation ignited a fierce debate in Congress. While many praised the rescue of the 42 hostages, there was bipartisan concern over the legality of the strikes. President Trump, on October 2nd, declared cartel members unlawful combatants, a post-9/11 legal term that grants the executive branch expanded war powers. This move allowed the administration to act without direct congressional approval, a point that alarmed lawmakers from both parties who worried about an unchecked expansion of presidential authority. An attempt by some senators to pass legislation requiring congressional authorization for further military action was blocked, highlighting the deep political divisions over the new strategy. The strike on September 3rd was not an isolated incident, it was part of a much broader campaign. Between September and October 2025, the U.S. conducted at least 9 similar lethal strikes on suspected smuggling vessels and significantly increased its naval presence off the coast of Venezuela. President Trump even authorized the CIA to conduct covert operations inside Venezuela itself. The raid on the Estrella del Mar saved 42 lives and stopped a massive drug shipment, but it also opened a new, uncertain chapter. It raised profound questions about sovereignty, the rules of war, and whether a military solution could ever truly defeat an enemy as complex and deeply rooted as the modern cartel. The war had changed, and its ultimate outcome remained unknown.